Okay. All right. So, job interviews, as you know, are really, really important. The job interview is the make or break test of your ability to convince employers that you are the right person for the job. So, you want to make sure that you don't blow it. There are many common interview mistakes that candidates make in an interview. Amazingly, the top one is lying. So make sure that you are honestly representing yourself and your experience on your resume and in your interview. The next most common mistake is appearing disinterested in the opportunity. The number three interview mistake is being unprepared. And if we jump down a little lower in our list, asking inappropriate questions is also in the top 10. And that's kind of what I want to focus on with you today in this workshop presentation is avoiding making the mistake of appearing unprepared or being unprepared. And a big way you do that is by failing to ask good questions. So that list that I just showed, in the survey, 300 employers were asked, would any of these interview mistakes cause you to reject a candidate? And 92% of them said yes, they would. So again, job interviews are important. You want to make sure you are doing your best representation. So here's the statistic. According to 67% of employers surveyed in a 2015 Career Builders survey, nearly half of all candidates who made it through the phone interview or initial screenings were eliminated after poor in-person interviews. So just some more statistics and numbers about the importance of a job interview. So an interview is your opportunity to sell yourself to an employer and to show the value that you would add. But it's also your chance to collect information about the job and the employer that you care about, things that will help you determine if you want to accept the job offer if you receive one. It's a chance for you to demonstrate that you've done some research about the employer, that you're actually interested in the job, and you're not just wasting your time or theirs. And then a chance to demonstrate that you're a good fit for the job and that you would be an asset if they can convince you to accept an offer. So failure to research a company and articulate why you're interested in working for that company can lead to the hiring manager rejecting you. So do your research beforehand to make sure you don't lose out on an opportunity. And an important part of your research should include coming up with some good questions you can ask the interviewer. Failing to ask questions or asking bad questions or even asking good questions at the wrong time can indicate you have a lack of interest in the position, that you're not prepared, or that you are a little low in intelligence, as in emotional intelligence. Some questions should never be asked in a job interview, and then some questions should be saved until after a job offer has been made and maybe you're in salary negotiations. If you don't have questions ready, you could come across as unprepared or disinterested, as I've mentioned. So as part of your preparation for an interview, set aside some time to practice your questions so that you can demonstrate that you are enthusiastic about the position. You can write down your questions and bring them with you to the interview, and make sure you prepare at least 3 to 5 questions. So I want to share an example of Bailey Stewart. Bailey spent 3 days preparing for her interview. She practiced mock interview questions with her career counselor. She had her best suit dry cleaned. She spent $100 on her hair and nails and arrived early. She even brought notes, project examples, and some quantifiable results for the hiring manager. Her interview started with a bang, but ended with a bomb. What happened? The hiring manager at one point in the interview asked Bailey if she had any questions for them. She said no, and then rushed out the door. Her mistake. She spent countless hours preparing for their questions without considering a few questions to ask herself. Many candidates forget that companies want proactive employees, members of a team who can bring something to the table. They're not interested simply in workers who just perform well. So don't make Bailey's mistake. Impress the hiring manager at your next interview with questions that you've prepared to ask at the end. So many times an interview should be like a casual game of tennis where questions are lobbed back and forth. They ask a question and you respond. You might also ask questions at some point so that they can respond. It's a back and forth interaction. And the more I feel that you can do that, the more able you'll be to make a connection with a hiring manager and with people at the company you're applying for. And that will help both of you be able to gauge how the fit would be if they were to offer you the job. So the key is to ask the right questions. Many candidates fail to ask questions, and others don't ask questions that require thought and show sincerity or care. So you want to make sure that you ask the right questions, because if you do that, you'll stand out from the competition. So keep in mind, don't waste the hiring manager's time with frivolous conversation or questions. Research the company, job, competition, and market before you go to your interview. Ask fresh questions, which means you shouldn't ask questions about information easily found on the About Us page or that you could Google and find the answer to. Hiring managers will interpret these redundant questions as you not doing your homework. They want candidates to ask stimulating questions and to prove they've put some thought into working at the company and to obtaining the position. So I want to start with some bad questions, some examples of things you don't ask, and then we'll get to all the good ones. So here are some examples. I'm not going to hit all of them. What does the person in this job do? What are the requirements of the job? You need to make sure that you have reviewed that job description that you applied to before the interview. What does the company do? How old is the company? Who's your main competitor? Those are things that you should research on your own and find out before the interview. What other jobs are available here? How soon could I apply for another job here? How quickly can I get promoted? These are things that you don't want to ask at your initial interview, even at any interview for a position. How quickly can I, oh, we did that one, sorry. Do you check references? Do you conduct background checks? Is passing a drug test a requirement? Those types of things, don't ask. I think with our group of students, that's probably a less common question to ask, but don't ask about maternity and paternity leave in your job interview. Don't ask about security cameras and do they monitor your email and your web browsing while you're at work. Always assume yes, they do. Don't ask, do you track when I arrive or when I leave? Does anyone check my work? Will anyone be looking at my social media activities? Again, assume that they will. I will tell you, I know of a young man who got the job and aced the interview, but was not very intelligent in the way he used social media and the things he posted on social media after he got the job. And although he was doing a good job in the position he was hired for, he was fired because of social media postings that he made after he had obtained the position. Don't ask, how long do I need to work here before taking a personal leave day or a sick day or vacation time? Don't ask about being late or leaving early. Don't ask about the process to be fired. Don't ask about, is it always this noisy? Is it always this cold? Don't say, I prefer working from home. How often would you like me to be here? Don't ask about your cubicle or your office, and don't ask about getting a raise. Other questions that you don't want to ask in your interview: how much paid vacation time you would get? Will you be paid for training, or will they pay for you to obtain an advanced degree? Or what other benefits they provide? Save these questions, which are considered selfish or self-oriented, for when you're negotiating a job offer. An exception to this is if the interviewer is pressing you on your current salary or salary expectation is sometimes they do. Tell them that your requirements would depend on other aspects of the job, like raises, vacation time, and training. Don't ask about employee discounts in an interview either. So here are questions you can ask. Ask questions about the job. For example, what do the day-to-day responsibilities of the role look like? What do you see as the most challenging aspect of this job? What does a typical day look like in this position? Are there any tasks this position would be required to do that aren't listed in the job description? What are the most immediate projects that need to be addressed? Can you show me examples of projects I'd be working on? What are the skills and experience you're looking for in an ideal candidate? What attributes does someone need to have to be really successful in this position? What types of skills is the team missing that you're looking to fill with your new hire? What are the biggest challenges someone in this position would face? What sort of budget would I be working with? Is this a new role that has been created? Do you expect the main responsibilities for this position to change in the next 6 months to a year? What do you expect from team members in this position? What's the work schedule like for this position? What's the toughest time of month or year for this position? A hint for the question about expectations of the job. If you ask about, anything that would be expected that's not posted in the job description, or will the job requirements and expectations change over time? If they hedge that question, if they repeat previous answers or give bland generalized statements, it may be not that they don't want to answer your questions, they just may not want to give you the upper hand when you're negotiating salary. So if they're reluctant or seem reluctant to answer truthfully, just make a mental note, reminder to yourself to revisit that question during salary discussions if you get to that point of the interview process. Other questions about the job. What prompted you to hire for this role? How long has the position been open? What was the individual like who previously held the position? Are you looking to hire someone with the skills to do the job right out of the gate? Or are you open to hiring and training the right candidate for this position? How are the goals and objectives set for this job role? If hired, what would be the top 3 priorities you'd like me to focus on in the coming year? You can also ask questions about the team. Can you tell me a bit about the team I'd be working with? What are the key positions and groups that I would be working with? What are the leadership or personality types of those people and groups? What are the 3 biggest challenges your team faces when working with other groups within the organization? And what do you do to minimize those challenges? What's the single largest problem facing your team today? What's the approval process for projects and tasks within the group? Who will I be working most closely with? You can ask questions about the company. I've read about the company's founding, but can you tell me more about blah, blah, blah? Where do you see this company in the next few years? What can you tell me about your new products or plans for growth? What are the current goals that the company's focused on, and how does this team work to support hitting those goals? What gets you most excited about the company's future? Can you tell me about the team I'll be working with? Who will I work most closely with? Who will I report to? Can you tell me about my direct reports, what their strengths and the team's biggest challenges are? Do you expect to hire more people in this department in the next 6 months? Which other departments work most closely with this one? What are the common career paths in this department? What characteristics do you look for in an employee to best represent the company's values? Where do you see the company in 5 years? What's a typical day like at the company? You can also ask about newsletters they produce, company picnics, and other efforts to bring the company together, company culture, etc. Does the company have a program promoting healthy living? What special events are typically scheduled for holidays? Does the company offer suggestion boxes or encourage open ideas and contributions? Again, what's the company and team culture like? How would you describe the work environment here? Is it collaborative or more independent? Can you tell me about the last team event you did together? What's your favorite office tradition? What do you and the team do for lunch? Does anyone hang out outside the office? Do you ever do joint events with other companies or departments? What's different about working here than anywhere else you've worked? How has the company changed since you joined? Other questions about the company you could ask. What's the single largest problem facing the organization today? What has been the top accomplishment of the organization in the past year? How does your company handle the generational gap that's evident in today's workplace? How do you handle or work with generational differences? What can you tell me about your company's plans for new services, product, or growth? What type of volunteer work and community service does the organization encourage? How many employees have you hired in the past year? How many were experienced, or how many were new hires? You can also ask things like, what type of information is shared with employees? Is revenue, profits, expenses, salary ranges, etc. shared? How much exposure do we get to the top executives within the organization? What's the policy for interacting with company leadership? Is there an open door policy within the organization? Make sure that you've got a basic knowledge of the company first, and only ask questions when the answers are not easily found online, okay? You can ask about something you've read in the news. For example, I've noticed on your social media channels that you've opened several new offices. That kind of growth is exciting. It made me wonder what lines of the business are part of that expansion. Or I came across an interview with your CEO and she touched on, this or this. What elements of the culture here do you like best? Do not ask about anything negative that has been in the news, okay? You don't want to reinforce that and bring that up. You can ask about performance, how you can grow in the role, the accomplishments that they'd like the candidate to achieve in the first 30, 60, or 90 days on the job, what the performance expectations of the position are for the first 12 months, what the performance review process is like, how often you're formally reviewed, what success looks like in the position and how it's measured, what the key performance indicators are for the role and how often they're measured, and what metrics or goals that your performance will be evaluated against. You can also ask things like, what type of performance review process does the organization have? How can I maximize the benefits of the process as an employee? How and when is feedback provided? What is your reward and merit system like? Do you have a reward system based on performance? What types of rewards do you offer employees? What types of achievements or traits are rewarded? You can ask about training and professional development. For example, how you'll be trained, what type of training programs are available, are there opportunities for advancement, are there opportunities for professional development, and if so, what do those opportunities look like? Would you be able to represent the company at a conference where the last person who held the job is moving on to, where successful employees previously in the position have progressed to? Does the company have a learning and development program? If they don't, carefully consider the possibility of experiencing stagnation. If this company does not have professional development opportunities, that might be a big red flag for you, and you might want to rethink accepting a job offer there. You can ask about the interviewer. Things like how long they've been with the company, how their role has changed, what they did before, why they came to the company, their favorite part about working at the company, why they chose their career and industry, what their leadership style is, what their biggest worries and challenges are. Ask them, hey, what keeps you up at night? And also ask, what do you feel has made you successful working here? All of these will be really helpful and educational information for you to have. You can ask about next steps. For example, in an ideal world, what's the anticipated start date for this position? Or what's the timeline for making a decision on this job? When would be a good time for me to follow up with you? You can also ask the format that they prefer you follow up with. Typically, it would be via email. What are the next steps in the interview process? Is there anything else I can provide you with that would be helpful? Can I answer any final questions for you? Asking about the next step shows that you're optimistic, that you want the job, and hiring managers appreciate a good sense of self-esteem from interview candidates. A final reminder on interviewing and asking good questions of an employer in an interview. Preparing job interview questions to ask the interviewer is just as important as preparing to answer the questions they'll ask you. So do your research. Take your time and be thoughtful with the answers that you give and with the questions that you ask. You also need to use good judgment as to how many questions to ask. If the time feels like it's flying by and the interview seems engaged in your discussion, then you can be a little bit flexible with that and keep asking questions until you feel it's time to stop. But it is best to go in with like 3 to 5 questions to ask, and then you can take it from there. And really, really important is to be authentic when asking and answering questions.